Travis Wayne Goodsell. Without fail, I had a dumbass pretend to be a smart aleck and comment on the video where I talked about the sealed portion and Christopher exposing that it was all a lie to punk Mormons, and still I get a comment from a dumbass, "What is your opinion on Christopher and the sealed portion?" I gave it to you in the video. Get the hell off my channel. So, how are you? The Book of Mormon is not Christian. It is not another testament of Jesus Christ. If that's a shock to you, it's apparent that you are incapable of reading and understand what you read from 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2. And if you comment your displeasure and your denials, you're an anti-Semite, and you spit on Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism. And so, yes, this means that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the great and abominable church that the Book of Mormon prophesied of. And you are in it. And if you act in defense of the church rather than Joseph, then you are the enemy. You are their puppets, doing their will to protect them in the big lie of Mormonism. And so, we're at the part where Lehi leaves in his Exodus pattern with the man like Moses, the Jewish Christ from Deuteronomy, the law, chapter 18, verses 15 through 19. And everything in the Exodus is a pattern for all other Jewish scriptures written during that time period of the Romans. That's when all of this was written. It wasn't written many millennia before BC, except the Egyptians did. And everything comes from the Egyptian documents and the Egyptian prophecies. And so the Book of Mormon is not literal history. It is actual prophecy, not just words spoken by someone claiming to be a prophet. Had another dumbass who didn't bother to figure out what's going on. He's the Zelf Bones guy. Apparently that is his name, as he claims. Which, you gotta check that. We're doing a baby name check. Baby name meaning Zelf. Iustus, which means just. It's a Latin word. Okay, cool. Unpredictable, adorable, confident. It's boy or a girl name. Although I do see Zelphia as a female ending for it. Okay, so yeah, it's a legitimate name. And Bones, that's the forensic investigator in the TV show of the same name. Deschanel, Emily Deschanel. Zoe Deschanel is her sister. Also does movies. I think she's gone on to a different TV show. I think it may be a period piece. I can't remember what it is. I haven't seen it. But I do have Bones. I do have a collection of Bones. And several movies from Zoe. And so, yeah, he was refusing to listen to what I had to say. He assumed he was right, that Joseph Smith just made it all up. There was no purpose and intention and Hebrew meaning behind it for the audience that he was speaking to. And likewise, threw in that he was the one that also asked if I was claiming to be Moses, I think, comparable to Moses. And he then went on to say, Moses was a prophet. You're no prophet. Moses isn't real. And again, this is just, you start with a falsehood and everything from that is wrong. Is that too complicated? But people are in denial that the core is wrong, just like Mormons. No, the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ because the prophets say so. And the prophets say so because the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ because the prophets say so. And the prophets say so because the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ because the prophets say so. And they don't know that it's a fallacy argument, and they're making themselves look dumb. And anybody who joins the church, getting fooled by this fallacy, big lie, likewise reveal themselves as dumb. And so it doesn't matter if Mormons are the most graduated from BYUs. BYU is a worthless education. It's null and void just by graduating at BYU. And it's because the church has infiltrated the science fields with psychology. Psychology is the core fallacy falsehood. And everything from psychology is wrong and evil. And we've seen that in the news here in Utah lately. And that's why I'm baffled with Natasha Helfer. What was she thinking? But nonetheless, it required Nelson to speak at the pulpit of conference on a video to put her in her place. And Nelson's a medical doctor. He knows he's lying to you. And yet, dear God. So that's the Great and Abominable Church, founded by Lucifer, the father of all lies. And even ex-Mormons, like Zelph Bones, you hear something that somebody had discovered, but you interpret it not in the learning of the Jews, but with whatever bias you use. Most often it's with a Christian interpretation, because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says that Joseph was Christian. And that's where they trap you. They take you down a rabbit hole of arguing back and forth as to whether or not Joseph Smith did or didn't do, and avoid the big lie that Joseph is not a Christian. And so the Mormons are able to continue to deny, despite the scientific evidence, because you're not talking about the learning of the Jews. And I'm the only one that is with the Book of Mormon, and with Joseph Smith, and with the Bible. Because the others that did start into it, and were publishing books, and doing video cameos, Zeitgeist, Dorothy Murdoch, they're dead. I'm it. I'm the last of that group that was doing research in that field. And so it's sad, because those who followed and believed in those others think that the field is now dead, that there's nobody else doing research on that, and they don't know about me. And so only the few of you who are remaining, now that I've switched over to the new channel of the Book of Mormon commentary and discussion in the learning of the Jews, as yes, the views are tanking, just as I knew they would. This is just not an interesting topic for Mormons. The Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ because the prophets say so. And the prophets say so because the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ because the prophets say so. Oh, God. So, yeah, Mormons are in for a rude awakening. You know, when people have a level of denial, the more trauma they experience when it hits the fan. And because Mormons refuse to get their own oil for their lamps, they literally are all foolish virgins. So it's not just the little 19-year-old girls that I saw on my way home that one morning, who I called the 5 foolish virgins, because they're just not old enough to have done enough study and research, and they haven't done it anyway. They're going on missions, freely thinking that it's Jesus, just like I did. So I know whereof I speak. I speak from experience, but I speak as one who actually did my research and study all these decades. Because I wanted to know, and nobody was giving me answers to the questions I had, so I had to search for the answers, and then I found out nobody else had the answers, and so I had to do the pioneer scientific-based research. So, this is a quick and simple one. It has to do with them camping at the top of the Red Sea, and Lehi then, because of the wickedness of Laman and Lemuel, points out the process for naming geographical locations. And so you can see that still to this day, it's done in that same manner. Especially here in Utah, as street names get named after a certain rich man or prophet. You know, Brigham City. I wonder who that's named after. Heber City. Well, that's a tricky one. You know, you get down to St. George, and then you have to do a little more research because it's not a Mormon name. It has something to do with St. George. But Nephi and Lehi and the Jordan River, yeah, those are obvious to see where they came from. And so that's all he's doing here, is he's naming the valley and the mountains. The valley and the river. That's what it is. So let's read over it. And it came to pass that when he had traveled 3 days in the wilderness, he pitched his tent in a valley beside a river of water. And it came to pass that he built an altar of stones. This is the law of Moses that Joseph Smith Sr. is writing about here. He's trying to keep it so that they're still following the law of Moses, the founding Christ, and thus it's to be understood as Joseph Smith, that Lehi is the man like Moses in an Exodus, and he's made it to the first promised land. There are patterns of Exodus patterns getting to the promised land over and over and over and over and over again. This is Zion number 1. Zion number 2 is when they get to the bountiful. Zion number 3 is they get to the Americas. Zion number 4, Nephi gets to the land that he calls Nephi and builds the temple. And then the next one is the Lamanites chase them out of Nephi, and they head off and find Zarahemla. Another one. And then there's others in between there as Zenith goes back to Zion, and then King Noah causes problems, and Lehi, an Exodus. So the Exodus pattern is throughout the Book of Mormon, because it's in the learning of the Jews. It's not literal history. And And so he's adhering to Joseph Smith. And this is also repeated several other times. Alma, for example, when he is in his Exodus, only preaches what Abinadi taught. Joseph Smith himself has section 28 and 43, where he specifically tells the elders, hey guys, focus on teaching from the Book of Mormon and from what I give you in these Doctrine and Covenants. Book of Commandments and 1835 Doctrine and Covenants. Don't go teaching your own will. Don't go teaching that we're Christian. Don't replace me in the Book of Mormon with Jesus. And yet, and so that needs to be understood here as well. That he's still adhering to the original Christ, which would be Joseph Smith, decoded, unsealed. And so, yeah, you notice the titles keep changing because I'm having trouble trying to figure out what's going to catch the most people's attention. It doesn't look like there will be one. I think those who are going to watch this are going to watch it, and those who aren't are not. And that's sad, because Mormons just don't care to know what's going to happen. They think all is well in Zion because it's the rest of the world that's going to be burned for not paying the church tithing. And so, yeah, this is what Laman and Lemuel are upset about. They're leaving. And he called the name of the river Laman, and it emptied into the Red Sea. And the valley was in the borders near the mouth thereof. See, Laman has the N at the end for king. And he is the birthright blessing son who claims that he's supposed to rule the tribe, and thus would be the king. So I can see that there. And then knowing Paleo-Hebrew, it's unclear as to whether they knew Paleo-Hebrew or if they're going off of the inaccurate Jewish Kabbalah form that Joe Samson tries to alter as well. Yeah, I can see how he's covenant of the Messiah, the king. That's a rough translation of Laman for you from Paleo-Hebrew. And so I don't see it connecting to a river of water. He goes on to say, he saw the waters of the river empty into the fountain of the Red Sea, and he spake unto Laman, saying, O that thou mightest be like unto this river, continually running in the fountain of all righteousness. So righteousness does correspond with the M, and continually running has to do with the oath-keeping, thus the L. And he also spake unto Lemuel. And so I can see what they're trying to do here. It's a little different than in Genesis, the author of Genesis, who, when a baby was born, the name was given, and then the meaning of the name was given. And then when they fulfilled the meaning of their name, they were then given a new name. And that new name had meaning along with it, and often defined. And so you have to know Hebrew, because if you don't know Hebrew, you're going to make a huge error at the pulpit of conference and expose yourself as the great and abominable church prophet by being an anti-Semite. Let God prevail, my hell. And so Lemuel, O that thou mightest be like unto this valley, firm and steadfast. Lemuel has L for God, at the end of it. And so again, you see the oath and the M for the Messiah letter. The oath of the Messiah, which is God rather than king, which is the same thing back in those days. Ancient world understood God as the king, human being. They only portrayed stories with supernatural powers and exaggerations. And if you're unclear, I refer to facsimile number 2, the Outer Rim, where the Pharaoh is claiming he's well endowed. And, I'd have to do further explanation on that. But, yeah, the author is saying he's well endowed, which is actually the scribe. But, yeah, extra information is required to explain that. But, yeah, it says that he is well endowed. But don't look. It's porn. And Nelson said over the pulpit of conference in his video segment, porn is addictive. And so reading and studying your scriptures is addictive and thus evil. A major victory for Lucifer. It's just, why do people fall for that? It's just unbelievable. Dear God. Alright. And so, yeah, the firm and steadfast has to do with the L in Jewish Kabbalah. Oath-keeping, oath-taking, and covenanting. And then having to do with Messiah. And so that's what they're doing here, is they're using the Jewish Kabbalah understanding of Hebrew. It's not my Paleo-Hebrew, but I do recognize the pattern matches. And so it goes on to say that they were stiff-naked. And unfortunately, that person who made that comment on one of my videos when I was not retired yet would go on to say something not appropriate, despite being a subscriber for years. And so this is why they were wicked. They were murmuring against their Christ, who was their father in this particular case. They didn't believe him. They were complaining. No, the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ because the prophet said so. And the prophet said so because the Book of Mormon. And because he's a prophet, seer, revelator, translator, visionary man. Got arrested for glass looking in 1826. And that he had led them out of the land of Jerusalem in an exodus. The man like Moses. And the Mormons are complaining. They don't believe him. They want to go back to Utah, where they had their wealth. Getting fired from a company just the other day. And others that are going on strike. I don't think there's much in Utah about the strike, but dear God. Now the healthcare workers are on strike, but I don't think I saw them in Utah striking. I think it's mostly the West Coast where that company is from. But here in Utah, if you strike, it's against the law and you get thrown in jail as domestic terrorists. and thus left the land of their inheritance. This is what Mormons don't get. This land of Utah is polluted. It is corrupt because of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Just the homeless alone was caused by the church. They were fed up with their petitioning for food and money to survive at Temple Square. And so the church complained to the government, deal with them. And so they did the Gateway Mall project right across the street. They knew the consequences before they started it and got the contractor to start building it. And so when Operation Rio Grande happened, they were going to lock them up. That's what they were doing. And then it became too much for the cops that were sent there to do that. So they had to call in extra cops from the surrounding cities. And they still didn't catch everybody because the homeless fled and spread out all over the valley. And so then they decided, we're not going to build new shelters. We're just tearing this one down. We don't have any plans to build another one. And then what do you know? The homeless have no place to live now. Oh, I guess we got to build shelters. And so they went around asking the various cities, who wants to have a shelter in your city? Hell no, was the reply, as it hit the news. And I saw people that I knew on the news saying, hell no. And what part of the scriptures is that from? Depriving the homeless of substance because of their poverty? Where is that in the Book of Mormon again? Where is that in the Bible? It's not. Instead, we are warned, if you do not take care of your poor, destruction comes. And so, Joseph Smith warns Mormons, section 103, talking about the man like Moses. But before the man like Moses comes, guess what happens in Utah? Nevertheless, if Mormons pollute their inheritances, they shall be thrown down. Well, Joseph is wrong. We need to correct him. We need to replace him with Jesus Christianity. For I will not spare Mormons if they pollute Utah. And so, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power. Guess what? You're going to pollute your inheritance. And be destroyed. Thrown down in this case. And so the man like Moses, who will lead Mormons out of bondage. Because you polluted your inheritance. You got to leave. Likewise, Jerusalem polluted their inheritance. But it's not literal history. Section 103 that I just read to you is the footnoting here. And I probably should put that in. So we'll put it in here, I guess. We'll come back to it some other time. I never finished the other one. Whoops. Okay, so it's in there now. That's why I didn't have a paper showing you that on that other video. Alright. And so, yeah, Mormons are going to have to leave behind their gold and silver, precious things that they've hidden in their coat jacket. They're betraying America with India. India? Or was it Iran? I think it was Iran, wasn't it? Dear God. And of course the DOJ goes after him and not the sex child predator trafficker who then, for the first time in American history, has ousted the Speaker of the House. And so now we're in chaos again. If they again have trouble picking a new guy. And both of the two guys that are running, they're already scandal-ridden themselves. Jim Jordan is the boy sex predator who allowed the boys to get abused. That lacrosse or whatever thing he was in charge of. And then other scandals he's been in. And the prosecutors just let him get away with it. Yeah, not important. Keep running the country as you're doing. Run it into the ground. Destroy it. And so, yeah, Mormons don't believe Utah's going to be destroyed. They don't believe the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is going to be destroyed. This is going to last for eternity because it's true. It's true because the prophet said it is true. Oh my God. And so, yeah, they have no clue about the learning of the Jews. They have no idea of the learning of the rituals, the theology, the scriptures, the religion, the traditions, did I say rituals, of the Jews. They don't know the Christ. And that's why Mormons are going to complain, and they're already complaining about my videos. They don't believe it's going to happen. And it was prophesied that Mormons would do this. Book of Mormon is true, just not the Mormon true. Learning of the Jews true. And so, yeah, they were like unto the Jews, which were at Jerusalem, who sought to murder their Christ. So, yes, Mormons are like the Mormons who sought to murder their Christ. So that's it. That's it. Mormons are naughty and bad because they're Christian, in denial of Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon. They have rejected the cornerstone upon which they were built. But Joseph prophesied that the capstone would come from within the great and abominable church, to be mocked, hated, threatened with death by the Mormons. Still don't know how you're ever going to get to Zion. I'm still thinking I'm going to end up in the cave like Ether and Moroni. That seems to be my fate. Thanks a lot, guys. And so, yeah, the final one here that's part of this. And it came to pass that Lehi spake unto them in the valley of Lemuel, and with power being filled with the Spirit, until their frames did shake before him. And then they came to their senses and put a hate comment and left. But yeah, I confound every Mormon. They don't like it. I did the video before I retired that Mormons are incapable of a sound argument to defend the church. And sure enough, Mormon after Mormon used the fallacy argument to defend the church. They can't do it soundly because the core is false. I set you up. It was a trap. So, yeah. And then Father dwelt in the tent. This is important because this is the end of this story. Technically, this should be designed differently. But their senior is doing it similar to the manner in which the author of Genesis wrote, because there's multiple stories being told in Genesis. It's not one continuous narrative from the Egyptian documents. It's multiple documents combined together into a narrative. And that's what Senior is doing here. He's taking story segments, and that's one of the keys to knowing that this one story is over, and my father dwelt in a tent. And it repeats. I used to do a Book of Mormon and the Learning of the Jews playlist when I wasn't retired, where I had gotten into these general information stuff. I didn't get into the full Joseph Smith Sr. did this. This is the church history part that's being talked about here, that type of thing in these series. So I'm being more specific with you with this series. But yeah, Senior is technically ended here. And this should be chapter 1. And rather than halfway into chapter 2, such that chapter 2 should start. And I'm going to put a note for that. Chapter 2. We'll do Roman numerals because that looks cooler. And so, yeah, it also has to do with he's now made it to the promised land. In tents, just like Moses. Man like Moses, the Moses account of the Exodus, they all leave, and they're wicked, so they don't get to go to the promised land. But tents. The tabernacle is a tent also. And then he goes to the Utah, top of the mountains, comes back. Mormons are having an orgy to the cow god on gold. Which is a weird thing, because in the Exodus story, they get gold and precious things to take with them on their journey from their neighbors. But then they turn it into a cow and have an orgy. But here, Lehi leaves it all behind, doesn't take anything of value with them, except when we get to the story where they go back to get the brass plates, which it's brass, it's not that valuable. There were other more valuable plates in the vault, we'll call it. But that's a future video. But yeah, that's what you look for when you're doing scientific research. Study. You look for patterns, and that's the pattern. When he says at the beginning, this is the learning of the Jews, boom, Deuteronomy 18:15 through 19 is the first thing that pops into your head. And then that Exodus, everything that happens in the Exodus is a pattern for everybody's stories and scriptures. That's why the Book of Mormon is in the pattern of the Exodus, because it's all about the man like Moses of the future, not Jesus. Nephi and Lehi they're both Jesus, not Jesus, they're both the man like Moses, Emmanuel. All right, we're done.